So you're in this transition 8 years ago. You have a lot of turmoil. How did you continue to tend to the spiritual needs of your people, even in the midst of the turmoil and sometimes in the midst of active conflict?
Yeah. First things first. This is about Jesus, and it needs to be about Jesus. So for me, it's how am I promoting what I know is Jesus? So we established a perpetual adoration chapel pretty soon into the program. We offer 12 hours of confession the first Friday of every single month. We put the primacy on that relationship. We talk verbally about our expectations for our parishioners. Of course, that they attend Sunday Mass, that they get to confession. They try to get to confession once a month, that they attend daily Mass once a week, that they have an hour in the Adoration Chapel. So if the spiritual life is primary, it heals people's hearts. It takes them back to Jesus and away from the distractions, but then also then just cultivates and keeps them where they need to be.
Mm. In these situations of merging parishes, there can be a lot of complexity. What is the first step?
Listening and patience. It is listening and patience. And I say that because even when I think about like showing up and saying my first Mass, because of course, like there's a part of me wants to say, well, of course, Jesus is first and foremost. And he is, and celebrating Mass and putting him in the center of our churches and making him who we need to be. But I remember showing up for my first Mass and just walking in, and the sacristan was very busy and frustrated, I could tell, and was very confused on why this priest had left and why I was there. And so much of it is about that need to be human, that need to listen to people and to treat people with dignity and respect.
Mm.
These are hurting people.
Yeah. The transition, the merging of the parishes creates an environment that is ripe for gossip and rumor. And how important is communication? And how did you approach that?
Communication is everything. My undergraduate degree is actually in communication, as odd as that might be, but I did a lot of Q&A sheets where I would sit down with my staff, or I would just sit down myself, and I would just like write down every question that I think people have right now about this topic. And I would just like, and some of them were a little bizarre, whatever it might be, but I wanted to be able to. So a big part of communicating clearly is you have to control the message. So I would ask questions and give them the answer. And then I would say, and if you have other questions and you don't have an answer to them, please come and talk to me. We have so many people that are no longer at church because they're angry. And they've heard part of the story, but you need to hear the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was very big on communicating in written, but it also then became a passion of mine to say, how do we communicate across the board? And this then involved engaging Facebook and the internet and other realms for us to consistently communicate a message. I talk to brother priests often, and they'll be upset because they're trying to bring about some sort of change in their parish. And they're like, well, I was like, well, tell me about your process of communicating. And they're like, well, I wrote a column in the bulletin. I said, well, how many people read the bulletin? So I'm one of the phrases at our parish is like, oh, you have to over communicate everything. You cannot expect people to read one communication. It needs to be over communicated verbally and written and on the internet. And by that, you might begin to bring people on board with having a cohesive understanding of what's taking place.
Was there a particular mindset or attitude that you wanted to embody and that you wanted to encourage your parishioners to embody throughout this process?
Radical welcome is the words that we use. We are in an area where there are many, many fallen away, disengaged Catholics. And this process did nothing to help it.
Mm.
It pushed more people away from the church. And we are called to evangelize. And we're called to be bringing people into the church, not driving them away from the church. And early on, we founded a ministry called, it actually already begun before I had arrived, but we embraced it full-heartedly. We called it Homeward Bound, and it was rooted in bringing people home. And I wanted all of my parishioners to be welcoming people home. This is a good place, a safe place, a sacred place. At one point, we printed up business cards that had a map where the 4 churches were and listed everything that happens and the mass times, and just we gave a bundle of 10 to each parishioner and challenged them, pass them out this week. So just trying to find what are practical little ways that we can, in the midst of all this transition, be a place that's not dying, but a place that's growing. Sure, something has died. Something has died. We need to honor that, recognize that, but then we need to be planting things right now. So a big thing for us was youth ministry. I was very blessed being the director of youth ministry for my first few years at priesthood. And I have found that a properly ordered parish is a parish that has young people in the forefront. And if you have young people engaged, you automatically will have their parents and their grandparents. And normally, financially, things will also fall into line because people see young people and they want that. They see their future. They see everything right before them. So early on, getting young people engaged right away and forming a youth ministry team and a youth ministry program that will bring life. But also, what is it also then? It brings welcome, because it brings people that haven't been engaged in the church, and it brings their parents who haven't been engaged, and it brings their friends from school that haven't been engaged. And then you have life. And once you have life, it's beautiful.
Mm. The bishop calls you on the 14th of February, did you say? And the assignment begins on the 31st?
Yeah, he called me on the 14th, which was a Friday. We met on the 17th. These dates are like ingrained in my mind. And then I start on the 1st.
On the 1st of March?
Yeah.
When did the destination become clear? When did the vision emerge for, okay, this can work, this is how it can work, and this is where we're going, this is what it looks like when it's working, when it's thriving, when it's flourishing?
Well, so March 1st was day one. I met with him in June to propose the let's not be too German with the Germans. We then began, so that's 2015. We began a process of actually redoing the interior of all 4 churches in 2016. In 6 months, we replastered, repainted, redid all the flooring, all the statues of all 4 churches. And we did it all by volunteers, and by the contractors that we hired were parishioners. And I would say that process of 6 months and coming out of that, which was the summer of 2016, was like, this is who we are. Like, we aren't going anywhere. And one of the reasons that we redid the church buildings was to make it very clear, like, no, we're investing money in these buildings. They aren't being shut down. Like, I don't care who you heard that they were going to be shut down. They're not being shut down. Otherwise, these are fools that are redoing church buildings that are being shut down. That was a great communication to the local area as well. But then it also brought people back to the church because they saw their churches in the most beautiful state they've ever seen them.
Mm.
And that created excitement and diamond. So yeah, it was about a 2-year process. that to be at a point where I was like, yep, we're going to be okay.